What's up, everybody? Podcast time. What are you giggling about already?
I just think it's funny. It's me sitting up here, and not anyone else.
It's wisdom and experience rolled backwards. So they start up front. Wisdom and experience up front. You've done all of their jobs. You built foundations for all their jobs.
You're welcome, everybody.
So we were going to do a all-staff episode, and because of some work in the sanctuary, we had to cancel it one day, and then we had to... Anyways, it's been a whole mess. So today we tried to makeshift a little version of it so that I didn't seem like a liar on the podcast in the past when I said we were going to do an all-staff episode. So this is not all staff, but it is all the staff that would come whenever I called them.
That is true.
So let's talk sacred season. We'll spend a few minutes. This post Friday, right, Caleb? Is that what you said? Or this post next week? It posts before sacred season starts.
This will post New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve-ish. So sacred season, the next coming days. And so a lot of people don't know what to expect. Let's start with Irvin. Irvin over here in the corner. Last year, y'all were here for sacred season, your first time. Did you know what to expect coming into sacred season, or was it one of those things where y'all just kind of had grown up spiritual, and so when we're talking about fasting, you knew what that was, but it was something that you had to kind of catch up, on the run with?
A little bit of both. So the fasting part I was accustomed to, used to. The whole sacred season part, the 21 days, what comes all with it, as far as committing on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, and then throughout the week, that was all brand new. So definitely didn't know that part walking in, but the fasting is the only thing I was
sense.
accustomed.
Yeah, for sure.
Accustomed to.
So let's go least favorite spiritual discipline. So during sacred season, we fast, we pray, we read our Bibles, we worship, we, there's a lot of serving, different giving, there's a lot of different spiritual disciplines that we do. Least favorite spiritual discipline. Go.
I'll just go with fasting.
Fasting. Why?
Fasting isn't fun.
Tony.
I would go to fasting. You'd love to go with and say it sounds spiritual and awesome, but listen, it's tough, it's difficult. Our entire life, even young people in youth group together, me and you, when our youth group would fast, and that was it just brings out all the difficulties of the flesh.
Reading the book Fasting by Jensen Franklin has been helpful, right? Because
100%.
it kind of puts motivation attached to what you're doing, why you're doing it, and spread some light on some stuff that's happening inside of you.
100%. My wife Kimberly, she's read that book every year during sacred season for the last ever since we started doing it. I've read it several times during sacred season. It really, really, really helps put everything that you're doing into view, and just it helps you with, sure, there's strategies and things like that, but from a spiritual standpoint, people that are new to fasting, they don't know what to expect. Yeah. It helps so much.
Yeah, I would say fasting, and always a struggle for me has been reading the Bible. I just hate reading, but that's not as much of a struggle now. But yeah, fasting, like Johnny said, fasting isn't fun. So.
Irvin.
Sorry. Definitely fasting. And I will say, because even though I'm accustomed to only eating twice a day, for some reason when fasting time comes, all of a sudden you want to eat at all times of the day, So definitely fasting.
Your father-in-law actually changed his whole eating life after last year's sacred season,
correct.
Right?
And we have fasted in the past, but sacred season fasting, was just something that taught us a whole different way of doing it, and he did change the way he does fasting.
Awesome. Bonnie.
I would say fasting is definitely my least favorite, but it's not my top choice, but I understand why it's necessary. That makes you not hate it as bad. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
I know what's going to happen because I'm fasting, so it makes it not miserable.
I love it. Christy.
I hate to say everything that everybody else has said, but fasting for sure. It's just because, like Irvin said, like you are your hungriest during sacred season. You've never wanted whatever meal you're craving the most during sacred season, and it's so hard.
Caleb.
I don't like fasting. I'm gonna be honest though, fasting's hard for me, but fasting for the 24-hour durations that we do as a staff is harder to me than anything. But I struggle at prayer a lot of times because my mind just be going places sometimes.
Yep.
And I really struggle with. And I think we read a book on this last year where the guy found that some of his most valuable prayer times were 3 to 5 minutes with God. I struggle during like Monday night prayers or staff mornings where for 15 minutes I'm just trying to keep my thoughts there. I think that's something that I struggle with a lot.
Interesting.
But fasting is sucky during the 24 hours. The one meal is doable, but the 24 hours suck.
Yeah, so I would just encourage everybody watching this that it is all of our weakness, and it's probably going to be yours as well. It is not easy. It's not, some people who do it for a weight loss benefit, they may enjoy it. The intermittent, fasting people, they may enjoy it because they're seeing benefits from it. But if you're doing it for a spiritual reason, you're going to find yourself hungrier than you've ever been. And like, why does that smell? Why do I want that thing that's been sitting on my desk for the last 3 months and I've never eaten it? Why do I want to eat it right now so bad?
That yellow starburst you find in your drawer.
Yeah, you're like, why do I now all of a sudden want that thing so badly? Last week on the podcast, Pastor Simeon and I talked about Wednesday night services. They're always amazing. They're always incredible. But let's talk about, because we've spent so much time on that. Go back and watch that podcast if you haven't. It's a great podcast. Carson watched it and she was like, "Dad, yours and Simeon's podcast was so good." I was like, "Thanks, honey." So we've already spent time on that. Let's talk about Monday night prayers during sacred season. Let's talk about prayer time during sacred season, staff prayer during sacred season. Let's talk about, for me, one of the times Irvin met me out here last year during sacred season, I chose a early Saturday morning prayer time and walked around the church, and it was freezing. Walked around the church praying early on Saturday mornings. Let's talk about those sort of times during sacred season and the uniqueness of those things and the maybe the special moments that we've experienced during those prayer times. Who wants to start? Go for it.
Mike.
I'll say that Monday night prayer is probably one of the most impactful parts of sacred season. I miss most Sundays being back with the kids, so I don't get to experience Sunday mornings consistently, and same thing for Wednesday nights. So Monday night prayer has just been something that when we moved here in 2019, it just became a part of like what we did every Monday. That's just what we do, and we make it work even with a little one. But there's something special. It's like people come with an expectation of, okay, God, I have this prayer request, or I'm joining hands with another person who has this miracle that they need in their life. And there's just such faith that's built in the room that it's almost like, okay, God, what are you going to do next? And it'd be really powerful if we did that every Monday night, but there's just something special about it. It's like we know God sees and he hears, and it's just a whole nother level of expectation and like people on the edge of their seats, like, okay, God, like we really truly believe you can do it.
Were y'all in the bubble last year?
Not during sacred season. We had gotten out like in November.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Tony.
I think probably one of my favorite Monday night prayers that we've ever had, and that we had it a few times, is the Monday night prayer after Sacred Sunday, where you've got, it's, I don't say overwhelming in a bad way, it's overwhelming in a good way, where you've got all of these prayer requests and needs laid out, and you just see the entire body going through and laying hands and anointing everyone. It's just a powerful moment, and for me, it's just really telling the amount of things that have became consistent disciplines in our life through sacred season, like, a consistent Monday night prayer, staff prayer, and things like that. That's one of the great things about sacred season is, yes, you can hone your spirit and lay some things to the side, but you can also gain some things that, like Monday night prayer and consistency in it, that will benefit you throughout the year if you will take the things in sacred season and really contemplate what you want to let go of and what you want to keep.
Yeah, staff prayer was one of those things that was birthed out of sacred season. We would do it in place of lunch because we were all fasting lunch together, and so we would spend that time in prayer in place of lunch. And then we got to the end of sacred season, and we said, okay, what are some things that we did that we want to keep in our lives or in our ministry, whatever? And so one of the things that came out of that conversation was that prayer time. And so now everybody gets to work at 8:30, and then at 8:40 we all go into the sanctuary, and every day is a little bit different of what our prayer focus is, but every day we have staff prayer together at 8:40, which was birthed out of staff prayer during sacred season to replace our lunchtime. So, yeah. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on the prayer times?
I mean, I'll just say, kind of tagging along with what Christy said, but I think the expectation has been built, especially for those of us that have been a part of sacred seasons in the past. We've seen the table that has been set. The Lord has done so many incredible things, like testimonies during sacred season prayer Monday nights that happen like during the week, that we're like, oh, wow, that, honestly, they're astonishing at times. And then post-sacred season, what we've seen for the last 8 or 9 years, just the actual, my favorite thing, like, about praying for people that is that when you see them, they are a physical representation of a miracle. Absolutely. Or of what God's done. And so, like, there's so many people in our church that are reminders for all of us of sacred season miracles and things that he's done. And I think that's one unique part about sacred season Monday night prayer is that expectation that people have, that they know that this time is set apart and there's an expectation that we can put on God to meet needs, to do incredible things. I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, there's definitely, one of the hard parts about sacred season for me is that I almost look through Christmas and I'm ready to get to sacred season. And I don't like that. I want to enjoy Christmas. I want to enjoy all things Christmas, but I cannot wait for sacred season, and I cannot wait for what God is going to do, and I cannot wait for the testimonies that are going to come from it, and all of the things that God is going to be glorified for during that season. Every one of us have testimonies of what God has done during sacred season, or people that we know of miracles that have happened during sacred season. And so we come into this year again, and there is an expectation in my spirit of I can't explain it. We were recording our devotionals. I sent this to all of you guys, but we were recording our devotionals, and I looked back at last year's devotional that I wrote. And in last year's devotional, what I said was, my favorite Bible character is Joshua, and I just believe the word of the Lord over our church this year is from Joshua 3, where he tells the people, get up, sanctify yourself, follow the presence of God because you've never been this way before. Follow the Ark of the Covenant because you've never been this way before. And what I told the people was, in that sermon prior to sacred season, what I told the people was, God is taking us somewhere this year that we've never been before. Stay close to his presence, and let's see where this takes us. And little did I know that God was going to open up, muchos llaves to us, and all of the things that were going to unfold in front of us, and campuses in other sides of the state, and now a campus in a different state, and all of we've never been this way before. This is absolutely crazy to see what God has done. And so now, as I look back over that last year, now I am sparked with excitement and intrigue about, okay, God, what are you speaking into us this year? What is it that you're going to do this year? I look back over the last 12 months inside of this ministry and inside of my life personally, and I look back over the last 12 months, and I could write a book over the last 12 months of what God has done in my life over the last 12 months. I'm talking about like bucket list stuff that I would have begged God for whenever I was first called into ministry. And multiple of those things have happened. Oh, you're on you outreach top 100, or preaching camp meeting for, like things like that. That just is like, this is nuts. And multiple of those things have happened over the past 12 months. And so I walk into this season even more excited about the possibility of what God is going to do inside of our church, through our church, and with our church this year, because of our commitment and our covenant, our surrender to Him over the next 21 days. So I'm excited to and I believe that for everybody's life, man. I believe everybody who participates in Sacred Season, they're going to experience the goodness of God in their life in a way that they can't truly explain. It's going to blow them away. That's what I believe. Let's talk one of the awkward parts of Sacred Season. Let's talk about at the end of Sacred Season, we sow a seed. We give a seed offering, a vision type offering. Do a lot of really cool things with it through the years. Last year we bought buses, and now those buses are being used every Sunday to bring people to church. Or I can't even remember all the stuff that we've been able to do because of that moment. Last we did a podcast with Scott. I don't know if it's out yet or not, about missions, and seeing some of the kids that we were able to sponsor this year, and to make sure that they were able to have a high school diploma because of people's giving, being able to sponsor our missionary to South Africa and pay for his housing for a year, things of that nature that we were able to do because of that moment, that visionary moment. Let's talk Sacred Season giving, and maybe the entering into Sacred Season, we think we know what we're going to give, and then we get spiritual because we fasted and prayed, and then all of a sudden God starts asking more from us. A couple of podcasts ago, Caleb talked about getting to that moment and the Lord speaking to him and telling him to clean out his bank account. And so every one of us, I'm sure, have experienced a moment like that. Let's talk through that sowing seed moment and the sowing with the expectation of reaping.
For me, I had a similar experience with Caleb a few years ago, and it's so crazy during Sacred Season where God's calling you to deeper in so many ways, so many areas, and listen, we've always said, listen, on Sacred Season, prepare yourself. So many people don't pay attention, and then all of a sudden on that day, they get there and they feel wanting to do something that they didn't prepare themselves for. So it's so important that you prepare yourself. And if God calls you deeper and calls you to do more, awesome, praise God. But God's not going to call you to do something that He doesn't provide. But we have to be careful as good stewards to not squander what He provides, to think well ahead of time and prepare, because all the things you named out wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for people sowing in that moment. And so, yeah, it's an incredible moment of generosity, but also probably more than that, obedience.
Yeah. Somebody else.
I think for me, what always happens is I go in with a number, and I don't know if it's just my excitement level or whatever. I end up probably making 3 transactions in the day. Either excitement, or Christy's like, no, that's not enough. But there's been cool moments in my life, not saying this is how works scripturally, but like I remember one instance that I ended up giving twice. I doubled what I gave, and this was one of our Sacred Season requests was for our house. And I remember that year we ended up, what it would have cost us to get basically into the house or whatever, all that stuff was taken care of. There was nothing that we had to really do. Like it all worked out. It was the perfect home for us. And that was that year specifically. But that's how it just works for us. I usually have a number. We talk about a number, but then on that day, it's usually, 2 more transactions that happen because we're just like, nah, let's do more. But I've never left those moments thinking, I hope I'm gonna go talk to Tony and see if he can give me a return. Like it's not like, oh, what was I doing? It's like I've always felt confident leaving those moments that whatever I've given, I'm going to reap a harvest, whether it's physically or spiritually, that I'll see something. I haven't regretted it yet.
You and Christy always on the same page?
We start on the same page, but what usually happens, she's in the kids service, and I'm in the actual sanctuary. So when I'm in the sanctuary, I guess I start feeling super spiritual, and so I'm texting her, hey, just want to let you know I gave this much more, and she trusts me in that. Like, if she says, hey, I want to do this much more, I'm like, okay, let's do it. But it's usually just like communication about, hey, this is what's happening, this is how I'm feeling right now.
What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we there was I think it was a year, 2 years ago.
I think it was last year.
I think it was 2
When I
years
came
ago. Yeah, it wasn't this past sacred season, but the one before.
Yeah.
But we I'd been praying. I had a specific number that the Lord had given me, and I was very confident in it. And like 4 days before sacred season, the Lord, loud and clear, told me to double it. And I knew where we were at, where we were trying to get to in life. We were trying to buy another house and had saved up some money that was really going to affect our ability to purchase a home. And I got mad at the Lord, honestly, and just such a lack of faith looking back, and I just said, Lord, like, I don't even want to tell Liv like this, like that's that's hard, and I told her the number, I think like the day before sacred season or sacred Sunday, and I said, this is what the Lord spoke to me. And sacred Sunday, she had texted me, I'm on the stage, we're on the stage for a long time on Sunday, and I'm on the keys. Yeah, and I hadn't looked at my phone, and the end of service, when that time came, she had sent me a few text messages and basically unloaded unloaded on me that the number that the Lord spoke to me was just confirmed, because she had been saving for a certain period of time, and that the number that we were able to give was all money that she had saved separate from money that we were doing. And I had no idea that she had been saving money for that. And I've heard this my whole life, but the Lord will give seed to the sower. And it's just, that was a scripture that reigned true for me that day, and was, I've seen God do miraculous things in my parents' finances and my finances my whole life, but that was a wake-up call moment for me, I think, that, hey, dude, like trust me, like, I got you, like, shut up, like, stop worrying about this stuff, and he used her, which was a really cool thing for us. He used her to help build my faith, and that was just super awesome.
That's awesome, man. I love the moment where we are all, faced with this. Okay, let's sow with the expectation of reaping, and with the same measure that you sow is the same measure it will be given back to you. And I cannot explain it. I say this every single year. I cannot explain it, but there is something supernatural in that moment, because we fasted, we've prayed. You read Jensen Franklin's fasting book, you can, he talks about the attachment of giving to fasting and how, the supernatural aspect of it. But there's something supernatural in that moment that happens for the person who sows the seed, for the church that receives the seed. And God blesses not only the church, your life, and is the kingdom of God is better because of that moment, and lives are changed because of that moment, and it's extremely impactful. So let's finish with this. Sacred season moment. The moment where you go, I remember when this happened. You got 10 years to choose from. You got 8 years to choose from. 4 years, 1 year. Your sacred season moment. It could be personal. It could be in a service. It could be. It could be It could be something that happened after sacred season, but a sacred season moment where you're like, this moment stands out to me about sacred season.
Like I said, I've got 10 years, so you guys think about it while I talk. But for me, it's easy. So many to choose from in services, miracles, and all those things. But for me, a very real, tangible moment was, like I was saying, I had a moment like Caleb where I just believed that God was telling me, hey, whatever's in your bank account, just give it all. And I did. And it was, I mean, Kimberly were fasting. One of our requests were to help us to get out of debt. And it was probably maybe a month later, I got a call from a guy here at church, and he said, hey, brother, I'd love for you and Kimberly to go out to dinner with me and my wife. And we said, okay, awesome. Yeah, we'd love to go out to dinner with you guys. So we went, and he said, listen, the reason we want you to come to dinner tonight with us is during sacred season, God spoke to me, and he said, empty out this account and give it to you guys. And it was and he handed me and Kimberly 2 separate $5,000 checks. So that's pretty tangible.
Yeah.
It was in my hand. So just an incredible moment of just God's faithfulness and his thoughtfulness, not only faithfulness, but thoughtfulness of understanding where we were.
And God always uses people.
Always uses people. Yes. People drive me crazy with, they're just expecting, God to feed the hungry children.
He needs willing vessels.
Yeah, he needs people to operate.
He needs willing vessels. Somebody else.
I'll go real quick.
Ervin.
So, with this past one being my first one, honestly, turning point for me was that morning we came for prayer, 5 a.m. I know you took off one way, I took off the other, and there was just this moment, that I was standing under the canopy, and I just froze in my tracks, and I looked up. It started raining the moment that happened, and I just broke down. It was God's spirit, broke me down, and he told me I had to surrender. Like I have, told you guys, I grew up in ministry, but that moment, I don't know, something changed within me that from that moment on, my life changed in every single aspect of what I did. And that point right there changed, up until Sacred Sunday, with the seed offering. I prayed for an amount. Betty prayed for an amount on her own. We got together, wrote it down on a piece of paper, showed it to each other, and it was the exact same amount, and ever since then, we have peace at home. She's not even working anymore. We are homeschooling Eli, and there's just an overwhelming peace that you cannot explain. But it was that morning, early, that I just had to surrender 100% in everything that I did.
Love it. Sim?
I think mine's a little different. There's a very specific service moment that I'll never forget. It was on a Sunday night when we were doing Sunday night services at 3690.
Yeah.
And it was, you got real prophetic and started speaking over a lady in our church's limb to grow back. And I'll never forget not just the moment, but the tangible presence of God that I felt in that moment. It was honestly, it was life changing. And when I think of sacred season, I think of that moment. I think of that kind of faith, that kind of tangible presence. I don't think about sacrifice. I don't think about starving. I don't think about giving of myself or time or anything. I think about that, and I don't think about having to give or any of those sacrifices that come along with sacred season. I think about the possible thing that God can do, and we say it all the time that there's nothing impossible for Him. But I truly during sacred season, I have felt the manifest presence of a God who is nothing is impossible for him, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Johnny.
Mine's probably going to be hopefully different than Chrissy's. I don't know. We'll probably say our son, but I would say, I mean, I think people here, we've said a lot that John DeHaven J3 is a sacred season miracle, but I don't think people understand that it didn't happen through that first sacred season time. And so I think for me, looking back at sacred seasons, there's definitely some things that mark my mind, but thinking about the waiting period between sowing our first seed for having a child to waiting to see what God was going to do, like expectancy of, okay, when is this going to happen? And then getting to the next moment in sacred season, the next year, and saying, okay, are we going to write down the same thing that we wrote the year before? Or is this something that's like, okay, you did it one time, do you give up on this? And so I think just the idea of waiting between miracles, I guess, the whole concept of, okay, I may not see it immediately, but I'm not giving up, and I'm looking forward to seeing what God's doing. And so for me, that the ups and downs during the waiting period of, okay, these are the good days, these are the bad days. Did God really say that? Is this really what's going to happen? You know, and then finally, you know, getting to the point where, okay, you know, we are expecting a child. So
Love it. Olivia.
A few things come to mind. You spoke a lot of powerful words over me and Simeon over the years, but I'm probably gonna cry. One thing that's stood out to me is we were on the stage at the end of service, and the staff and stuff, they pray with each other at the end of service and stuff, because we are praying over other people at the end. And me and Simeon and Miss Kathy and Pastor Brad were on the stage, and you looked at me and you were like, pray for Kalina. And I was like, who is that? I have no idea who that is. A year later, too late, maybe, I'm riding down the road heading to the beach, and I look over, I'm going to the beach with Kalina, and I just thought that was the coolest moment for me, because I looked at her and I said, I don't know if you know this, but Pastor asked me to pray for you sacred season, and you're a sacred season miracle. And I didn't even know who you were at the time, and now we're riding down the road going to the beach together, and I just thought that was so powerful what God did in that moment.
So cool. There's so many baptisms that we experience every single week that are sacred season miracles, and we don't even realize it. You know, we don't even understand what God has done. Sister Kilman.
I mean, of course, I could go on the rest of this podcast talking about our son and the miracle that he is, and that the church rallied around us to not only believe for it and pray for it, but then they got to walk that out and pray with us through all that. But you guys have heard our story a lot, but I kind of wanted to do something different in this moment and talk about something that really radically changed me. Was like some intense prayers that kids have had during this season. I'll never forget. I wasn't working at the church yet, just serving. And so I was teaching during the day. And I remember the very first Sunday of sacred season, we have the kids write down on a prayer card what they want to see God do, like what are they asking for. And some of them understand, and then you have some that throughout the season start to slowly understand what a prayer request is and what they're really asking for, and that they're still believing year to year, even if it doesn't happen immediately. And I just remember the faith of this child. I came in after school, had ended on Monday, and I was putting up the sacred season cards onto like our little board that we had at the time, where they would display themselves throughout the season, and we would pray over them every single time we gathered together. And I remember reading one and just absolutely it just wrecked me. It said, I pray for a car for my mom to be able to bring me to church in. And I lost it. I remember, I think I brought it into Pastor Simeon's office and Pastor Jamie's office, and I was just like, I can't even like the faith that these kids have, and this is what they're asking God for. Like, man, I don't even care if my sacred season prayer gets answered. I pray that these miracles that these kids are asking for, I pray that they build their faith in this season. I pray that God builds their faith. And I'll never forget that Monday night. So that was a Monday afternoon. We wept over in the office that afternoon after school. And then that night at Monday night prayer, I think you brought it up, and someone came forward that night and said, I know what my sacred season offering is going to be this year. Where do I drop this car off at for this family to have? And it was just like, I think it was Sacred Sunday, or one of the Sundays during sacred season, we were able to present this family with these keys. And it seems like an extravagant thing, but the person who gave will never understand the gravity of what that meant for that child and that season. And I mean, later on, that car literally became that child's home for a while. Like, I don't know if people knew that about his specific situation, but it was more than just him having the faith to ask for it. It was provision for that family, and it took the faith of a child. It was pretty awesome.
Man. I am fasting. I was supposed to say I ain't fasting yet. I just cry the whole time when I'm fasting. I'll tell you mine really quickly. Last year, my wife was in a battle with anxiety, and she was coming out on the other end of it about this time, but she had still really been struggling with some stuff. And, we brought in a few guests, and nobody knew our story. Nobody knew what we were going through. And Kevin Wallace and Kevin McGlamry will never know how the words they spoke over my wife changed her life. She watched them often. She had them written on the mirror at the house. So, a prophet of God standing in a moment under the anointing of God to proclaim the word of God over somebody's life. Sacred season's great for me. I love what God is. I am spoiled rotten. God has been so good to me every single day. But to do what he did for Maddie last year, it was incredibly special. Incredibly special. So there's that. I can't believe I fought through that without busting into tears.
It's impressive.
Oh, I had to hold him down quite a few times. Sacred season is amazing. If you haven't been a part of it, or you haven't planned on being a part of it, figure it out, be a part of it, join in, start somewhere. Don't feel like, oh man, I'm going to miss Monday nights. I'm not going to be able to be a part of any of it. Man, start somewhere, be a part of it, and I promise you it'll change your life, change your family, and change your 2025. Right? All right. Love y'all. Thank y'all for spending some time with us. Peace out. Let's go.